Ladies and gentlemen, now it's time for our next panel called Elegance in Motion. The theme uncovers the freshest trends and technologies in luxury cars, yachts, jets, and we'll look at some insights into cutting-edge design, electric hybrid power, autonomy, and really some innovations in manufacturing. Ce thème, Elegance in Motion, la motion Elegance en motion, révèle les tendances et les technologies les plus récentes dans les voitures de luxe, les yachts et les jets. Nous allons acquérir des connaissances exceptionnelles sur les designs de pointe, la motorisation électrique et hybride, et autres aussi, l'autonomie et beaucoup d'innovations en matière de fabrication. I'd like to ask to join me on the stage Paolo Dellachá, CEO at Automobili Pininfarina from Italy, Paolo, and Martina Lofqvist. Martina, it's good to see you. We haven't seen you before today, so thank you. Come and take a couple of seats. I'll sit there. There we go. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Thank you for joining me. We had a chat online before, but it's nice to see you here on the stage. Now, Paolo, you're currently serving as CEO of Automobili Pininfarina. You're going to tell me a little bit more about that. You've been CEO since February. A wealth of experience in the automobile sector, I know, and you're playing a really pivotal role in the steering the vision and operations at Pininfarina. Everybody knows the name, and we'll talk about that as well. An extraordinary luxury electric vehicle manufacturer. Now, Martina, Senior Business Development Manager at Destinus, now currently holding that position with extensive experience I know you have in the business world, in the background, and we can talk more about that. And Destinus is a really exceptional company, what you're doing. It's amazing what you're doing. So we're going to learn some pretty extraordinary things. So Martina, firstly, just tell me a little bit about who you are, your background, and tell me about Destinus.
Sure, thank you. Hello, everyone. So I'm Martina, and I joined a company called Destinus right at the start, as the first full-time employee, about 2.5 years ago. And what we're trying to do is really to transform the aviation industry. So we're looking at using hydrogen as fuel, which can be produced in a sustainable way through water by splitting it into H2O. And when you then combust it in an airplane, you get mainly heat and water as the outcome. So we're trying to do that as well as to fly extremely fast at hypersonic velocities. So that's 5 times the speed of sound. And to offer this in the early 2030s, so very soon.
Okay, I'd like one. But anyway, there we go. Paolo, tell me about Automobili Pininfarina in English, not in Italian, because I won't be able to follow.
I'll do my best. Okay. So good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me. So Automobili Pininfarina is basically the sister company of the more famous Pininfarina SPA, the design company. We started our journey 5 years ago. And our dream was basically actually to realize the dream of the founder, Battista Farina, to create the first car to actually bear his name upon it. And we decided, and actually also this is what really captured my willingness and my wish to join that challenge, that this car should have been electric right from the beginning.
It is electric, and we can see some images on the screen. I don't know if we have other slides, but I mean, I've been looking. If anybody wants to go online and look at, yes, here we go, Automobili Pininfarina. The pedigree of Pininfarina, of course, is very old and very rich, and this is something that's amazing to have in a brand like this. It's all about brand, isn't it? So if you came with another name, it wouldn't probably work anywhere near as well.
Yes and no. From one side, bearing such a name provide you the honor and a little bit also, let's say, the responsibility of keeping the name very strong. And from the other side, you have the advantage to have a lot of inspiration from the past. Pininfarina was basically starting to design cars in 1930, and they did that in a very great way for more than 90 years, designing cars for the most valuable brands around the world. Most of the collaboration, of course, the most known one was with Enzo Ferrari, so the partnership with Battista Farina and Enzo Ferrari, so that started more or less in 1954. And given that heritage, given that tradition, you have just wonderful example that you have from the past, then the challenge become, how should I do next? What will be the vision of the future? And this is what we start wondering 5 years ago when we start to design the first car, Battista.
Tell me about your designers. I mean, we can look at this image. It's quite extraordinary. Who are the designers? How are they doing this? And why? How have they come up with this design?
Well, we have a team of designers that is really great. The chief design officer, his name is Dave Amantea. He has also been with me from the beginning of this journey. It's really a lot about the vision. We like to say that we are a design-driven company rather than technology-driven. Technology and innovation for us are more a way to achieve what actually is our goal. And our goal is to create emotions. When we started this journey and we decided that we would have had an electric technology to empower our models for the future, for us the challenge was to demonstrate that electric can be beautiful and electric can be exciting, because as we all know here in the luxury is really a lot about emotion. Part of the decision, if not most of the part of the decision, is the unrational part. There is the rational, which is related to the investment, to the residual value, but there is a lot also fun rational, which is about the emotions that you want to create. For us, it was design above all and driving experience. And that's why we use the technology to allow that design to express at its best, as well as the driving dynamics of the car.
Mm. So, Martina, you've been talking about this amazing development of jet aircraft that are going to go 5 times the speed of sound. What point are you at now, and what kind of tests have been done? What design has been done? Where are you up to at the moment?
Yeah, so unlike your company, we did not come with any brand when we got started. So we started really from zero, and what we had to do is to show instead what we can do. So we were able to raise funding this way by putting things in the air within 4 months of the company getting started, 4 or 5 months. So we designed, built, and flew a model aircraft that was out of the hypersonic shape within just 4 or 5 months. And that's what we've been kind of having as a philosophy within the company ever since. And it's really been helping out both to raise awareness of our brand and also to raise some funding as well. So far we raised about 50 million Swiss francs in capital, in seed round. And we have 140 people in the company. So that's just within about 2.5 years. So we've been growing quite quickly. It feels like I've been in this company for almost 10 years, actually. Because
Whereabouts are you based exactly?
We're based in Switzerland. So headquarters are in Payerne. For those who are familiar, it's in the middle of nowhere, essentially. It's an airport there.
You have an airfield, obviously.
There's an airport there, but we're not using it because regulations in Switzerland are a little bit more tricky than those in other countries. And now that we're going to supersonic, we need more space. We need oceans to fly over. So we're based there as the headquarters, and that's where the majority or many employees are, not the majority, about 40 employees are there. Then we have also an office in Madrid. We have one in Paris. We have one in Munich. And we recently opened another office in the Netherlands because we acquired a company there that is building gas turbines. So now we're also generating revenues from the energy market. And this is also enabling us to get more into propulsion developments because they have all of the manufacturing capabilities there that we can make use of. And these gas turbines, they're also being tested right now on hydrogen. So one of the big projects that we're looking into is to create some sort of hydrogen valley with all of our hydrogen-related technologies, which is the first step to then be able enable us to have hydrogen at a cheap price and a sustainable way available for our propulsion testing and also for the flights in the future. So this infrastructure is like the key. Really.
Hydrogen has been also discussed for a long time for cars, but electric drives have come in quicker, and hydrogen is now being looked at for some racing cars. In the next few years, we'll be seeing hydrogen racing cars coming out at Le Mans and so on. Paolo, have you thought about using hydrogen, or is this something that's still, in the background?
In the short term, we will stay electric, but we are definitely looking to all technology, fuel cells, and of course hydrogen for the future as well.
Because the nice thing with a hydrogen car is it actually sounds like a car that people are used to hearing. But I mean, in some ways that's a bad thing because it still makes noise, right? So I don't know what's better. Racing cars, it's nice because they can keep going around the track. So you've got, getting back to the jets, you have a number of people working on the jets at the moment. You've had one model. What else has been developed so far? Where are you at now?
We've actually built a few flying models. So the first one was in 2021 that we flew, and then we built a 10-meter one in 2022 and flew it successfully. And then we flew with hydrogen for the first time in May, so that was a big milestone for us, gaseous hydrogen. We're using liquid hydrogen in the long term, and that's because you want to have as small of a volume as possible. It's lighter than normal fuel, but it takes up more space. So in liquid form, you can have more energy per volume that you utilize. So it's cryogenic, minus 253 degrees Celsius. So it's very challenging to handle this. So our key technologies that we're developing now is on the propulsion side, as well as the infrastructure, as I was mentioning. So we're setting up a test facility in this middle of nowhere Payén facility that we have. And we're setting up another one together with the Spanish government in Madrid. And then we're looking at creating this refueling unit that you can easily move around and transport to wherever we will have the airport in the future for fueling our next prototype, which is going to fly supersonic.
How big will these planes be to start with, and how big will they become in terms of size?
So we have two products that we're looking at. The first airplane that I was mentioning is going to be introduced in the early 2030s. It's going to be a 25-seater airplane. And it's going to be going around 10,000 kilometers in distance. So that's taking you from, for example, Paris all the way to New York in 1.5 hours. So that's going to be very impressive in its own. But then the long-term goal is to introduce a very large airplane where you can also introduce economy class, because the first one is going to be more business class focused, so that you can have the economy class and also economies of scale so that the ticket prices can decrease. So that's a 400-seater and 22,000 kilometers. So it can really get you from Europe all the way to the other side of the world, say New Zealand, in 4 hours.
People are going, wow, I can see why. Do you think people will be scared to get in one of these things? I mean, frankly, it's like we've seen what happened with the Titanic. It'll be the first off, and we knew that this is obviously one of the questions people ask, right?
Yeah, definitely. So you have to think about it not as a normal airplane. It's sort of a mix between a rocket and an airplane. So it's going to be flying at very high altitudes in the stratosphere. And it really is a mix of a rocket and an airplane in terms of the technologies that we're developing as well. And the shape of it looks a little bit different as well. So in the beginning, there's going to be some early adopters that dare to go inside of it. Of course, it's going to take some time before it gets adopted to the mass market. But because we're also dependent on hydrogen, we can't launch it everywhere at the same time. We need to make sure that there's hydrogen infrastructure at the different hubs where we are flying from. And yeah, of course, passenger comfort is going to be the most important thing to us. So G-forces, I know a lot of people ask about that. Am I going to be able to survive the speed, the acceleration? That's all about how quickly we accelerate. So that's something that we can ensure that the G-forces are below a certain number, and that's one of our big requirements. One other thing that people are a bit curious about is we don't have windows in our design. We're probably going to add a few, but there's probably not going to be windows at every seat, as in normal airplanes, and that's just because of the massive amount of heat that you get on the outside. And if you've seen the space shuttle or other rockets, they don't have a lot of windows either, and that's because the material that you need for that is very special. So
maybe videos or something.
So
like
LED
that, so
screens, we're going to have LED screens and such on the inside. This is something we're still looking into and designing. We still have a decade before they are all that.
So back to you, Paolo. We were talking about the electric transition and these cars. The B95 is an open roof car. I don't know if we saw a picture of that coming out 2025. Who is going to buy these cars? What type of person will buy these cars?
Is collectors. Is collectors that we are approaching basically on a direct basis, one-to-one base, directly or through a dealer of or a network of dealers that is worldwide, about 25 qualified dealers. And what we have started, some of them, by the way, were with us from the beginning of the journey. So we launched the Battista in 2019. It was here in Geneva, by the way, the last auto show. And the car was delivered to his first client in 2022. And we see is really a journey, the one that we are doing with our customers. Each of them test drive the car before buying the car. And actually we provide an overall experience that possibly allow them to come to Italy, in Cambiano, to our factory, visit us, visit the museum, talk to the designer, talk to the engineers. Of course, we take them out for a beautiful ride somewhere in the Lang area, which is our favorite route to drive Battista. So it's really a journey. We see that most of them, when they are buying an electric, some of them for their very first time, is not something that will replace anything that they possibly already have in their collection in terms of combustion engine supercar. So it's an addition to them. And this is the right way in which we like to approach electric from our side, including myself. I have been developing combustion engine car for my first 18 years. And I love them, and I still love them.
So give me some figures now. How much is it going to cost, and how fast can it go, and how powerful is it, for example?
Battista starts from 2.2 million euros. And of course, the final price can vary a lot according to the level of bespoke. Possibly all of them, by the way, are bespoke. Actually, when we sell one, we freeze the configuration so that it will not be available for any other client, so stays unique. And the acceleration figure are quite high, so the car has 1900 horsepower and 2,300 Newton per meter torque, allowing them to accelerate in less than 2 seconds in 0 to 100. However, I must say that today I actually start to feel slower when it's about the hydrogen jet of Martina, but it's the first time, by the way, that I feel slower, but it's okay.
Yeah, 350 kilometers an hour, obviously that's limited to that because it could go faster, right? Is it limited to that speed?
Well, it is limited. So yeah. The car could actually reach around 450, but we limit it because it's a car that is fully homologated, so road legal. So let's say that on a track with special tire, you could reach higher speed, but for road legal use, we limit it to 350.
Yeah. This is we've seen that with a number of other very high-powered cars like that. So you could probably get someone to, tweak it for you if you want to go off in Germany.
We have already had some of our clients asking us to do so, but we keep it confidential. Again, what is the autonomy? We've seen the autonomy is very good. Who is behind the brand? Who is behind your group? Where does it come from? Well, the Pininfarina, the main shareholder is the Indian group Mahindra & Mahindra, and actually the vision that was started 5 years ago was basically due to two people. Anand Mahindra, who is still the chairman of the Mahindra group and a visionary man, by the way, and third generation self-made man that is still leading, especially in the way of his overall energy and vision, the overall group, and Paolo Pininfarina, who is the nephew of the founder Battista, that also, and the two of them basically had the vision to create this very first car having the brand Pininfarina on the center.
What are the advantages of an electric car today, to your mind, or a car like this that's electric compared to a thermal car?
For us, is mainly two, and is again related to what I was trying to explain before, so the goal of providing excitement and emotion. So with an electric car, you can package mechanical elements in a complete different way, removing many constraints from a classical or even not classical combustion engine or plug-in hybrid vehicle. And that allows you to basically approach the development of the aerodynamics on the exterior and the ergonomics on the interior in a complete different way. So you actually unleash really the full potential of the designer in that sense. And from the other perspective is basically the fact that due to mostly is about the less cooling needs that you need on an electric car, so you can develop much more power with the right energy density coming from the battery pack, and with that, of course, to have a brutal acceleration, and more than that, the agility. Battista is very unique, has 4 independent motors, and with that we can basically apply the ideal torque vectoring. So the car is actually very fast when accelerating, but is even faster when cornering.
How much does it weigh? Because obviously the current problem with batteries is the weight.
Yes, and still is, although the technology is fastly improving. So right now, basically, just imagine that the battery pack is 1/3 of the vehicle. So even in a car like that is full in carbon fiber with the Battista, you are still over the 2,000 kilograms. So we are looking forward in this sense to basically increase the energy density and the power density much more. So battery that we estimate will become lighter, and this will enhance the overall performance even more.
Who makes the chassis? Do you make your own chassis, or is it's a different chassis?
We work with many partners, so technology partners. One of them, for example, is Rimac. You might know. So with them, we developed basically the most important system of the e-powertrain. It was a co-development, and many others for the suspension, the steering system. As it is normal, even more for us, we are a small company anyway, you need to have possibly the best supplier, the best technology partners to really, let's say, put together something that at the end will be fast and also reliable.
We're talking about today, but let's look at the future. In 10 years, when batteries weigh a fraction of what they weigh now, because I know that's where they're going, right? I mean, what are we going to see in, say, 10 years' time, 15 years' time? Your vision?
Well, I think that in the next 10 years, definitely increase of power and energy density. We are looking with a lot of attention to solid state battery, that actually the enabler in terms of light weighting. And as I said before, over 10 years, I'm sure that fuel cell and also hydrogen, but it will have to basically not only be enhanced by the technology, it goes together with the legislation and it goes together with the infrastructure. So I think that also that will become something that will take important percentage of the overall market. However, I would not think that there will be anything that will take overall 100% in terms of technology. I still believe that there is space even for improvement for the actual combustion engine technology.
Well, of course, hydrogen combustion technology will probably come in and replace eventually the current ones. Anyway, Martina, your vision for air travel for the next, project yourself 20 years in the future. What will we see?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I was going to say 10 years. That's probably too soon.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of companies now, aircraft manufacturers, including Airbus, but also smaller ones that are looking into alternative fuels and also electric aviation. So how I see it is that the stepping stone is to utilize SAF, for example, sustainable aviation fuels, because that's a pretty easy implementation, and some airlines are pushing for this and already utilizing parts of SAF within their fleet. And then the other part is the electric side. So that is great to use batteries when it's shorter flights, so regional aviation, for example. But we also see some hydrogen fuel cell technologies coming out for regional flights, so that's quite interesting. We're focused on the long range. So in 20 years' time, I think there's going to be more companies catching on to the long-range flights, because we all know how valuable it is to be able to see people in person and to travel to other locations, exotic locations around the world, and for business conferences, etc. It's highly important. So we're not going to see a decrease in air travel. We're actually going to see a significant increase, specifically now that more and more people are getting passports as well, and the middle class is growing in certain critical regions around the world. So the air travel is going to increase. We're going to see more people wanting to go long range, and therefore we believe that hydrogen is going to be one of the key answers to alternative fuels. And Airbus is already looking into concepts for a hydrogen fleet for longer ranges as well, combustion engines. And our advantage then is also adding the hypersonic elements, so going extremely fast so we can be even more connected around the world. And we see some other companies popping up in the US, for example, and parts of Asia that are also looking into supersonic and hypersonic travel right now. So I believe we're going to go faster and we're going to be more sustainable. Well, we have to be. There's going to be regulations telling us to be.
So are you looking at partnering, no doubt, with other companies to join in with this adventure? Yeah,
we're already talking to some of our competitors where we need to move the regulations together. So they are competitors, but we're sort of discussing with them as well, how do we implement these kind of supersonic and hypersonic aircraft, because right now there are no regulations for that kind of altitude and that kind of speed. So to some degree we need to work together with the other players in the field as well to make it work.
Okay, now we have a few minutes left. I'd like to throw a question out into the audience, like we've done in the past. Who in the audience has an interesting story to tell about this? We have up the front, Ben, if someone has a microphone. Sorry, I have a story to tell. Okay, a question. Questions are good as well. We take questions, we take stories. Anything is good. But we have with the microphone so everybody can hear. Okay.
Maybe we can launch a short video from Pininfarina.
Oh, we have a video as well from Pininfarina. Yes, okay, let's quickly look at the video as well.
Thank you.
Very exciting. And then we go to the question.
Thank you.
That
was
B95,
the car that... Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, so for Martina, I remember many years ago when Concorde failed and had a fire, and that's how the industry got panic and the regulation steps in. So I think maybe you will encounter the same issue from the regulation point of view. Do you think the regulation is going to move the stone to allow you to do this supersonic kind of the flight? I mean, I personally would benefit tremendously because I spent so much time on the airplane, and I really would like to cut it. Even just half of the current speed or even 2/3, I'm happy, because I see the industry is absolutely not moving. That's so frustrating. You know, cars are driving faster, but the airplane is always the same speed. That was very frustrating to see that.
Yeah, that is correct. And I usually give the examples that trains have increased their speed by a tenfold since the 1950s, but airplanes are still flying the same speed besides the Concorde. Regulations is actually our biggest concern. So that is why we're also talking to some of our competitors and also engaging in some studies right now with, for example, Eurocontrol and IATA, because we do believe that we need to be on top of that for it to change. One way for us to avoid some of the regulatory hurdles that Concorde had is we try to fly over unpopulated areas. So we are looking at hubs and routes that are not flying over cities and populations, because that was actually one of the challenges that Concorde had. They didn't have the range to avoid some of these cities and locations. We are really focused on the range. Specifically, hydrogen is enabling us to have longer ranges. So when I mentioned flying from Europe all the way to New Zealand, that would be by flying either south of Africa or north over Scandinavia and taking that path instead, until the regulations might open up in the future, might open some paths. And right now in the US, they're actually looking into a supersonic path along the country. In terms of the safety concerns with what happened to the Concorde, that's very valid, of course, and that's something that we're, of course, going to work on as much as possible to make sure that we have the safest aircraft launched into the market before any humans go on board it. And our approach to that is flying autonomously before we put people inside of the aircraft. So the prototypes that I was mentioning, they were flown with either a remote pilot or they had autonomy on board. And this is what we're developing right now, step by step, until we get to large aircraft, which will also be flying autonomously, but they will have a safety pilot on board in the future. So this allows us to do a lot of testing in the air without putting any humans into risk. And that's one of the ways that we're tackling that hurdle. And the other hurdles are then to try to figure out the regulations around the altitude, because we're operating up in the stratosphere. The Concorde was flying at about 18, 20 kilometers altitude. Normal aircraft are about 10 kilometers. We're trying to be between 30 and 40 kilometers, which is uncharted space. So this is another thing that we're now with some of our competitors.
Also, I guess the Concorde was designed 50 years ago, and I actually have a friend who trained to fly the Concorde and was a close friend of the pilot who crashed, and he told me that it was a very difficult plane to fly, and it was people were told it was safe because the pilots were very good. At the time, the engineering was very good for the time, but I think compared to what we're seeing now in current aircraft, it was quite a dangerous airplane, actually.
Yeah, and it was designed in the 1970s, so a lot has happened in the aviation industry in terms of safety and the computers that you use on board since then. So we're of course going to implement many of these new things as well into our aircraft.
Yeah. Do we have any more? Yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yes, there is stories and there is success stories, because we are in Luxury Innovation Summit, and luxury itself, it's an industry. And there is more than luxury, which is super luxury. Pininfarina have been launched here in Geneva during Motor Show, and it have been, yes, a very interesting event. All the guests, they were here. The brands itself, Pininfarina, it's trademarks and industrial design. It is at least 2 intellectual property systems, but more, because the interior design, there is also various aspects, including in business aircraft. So, as you mentioned, supersonic, this is an innovation itself. But business aircraft, I will conclude by a question anyway. But business aircraft, sometimes there is very interesting business during the humanitarian context. But as you mentioned, the jet industry, it is luxury. For example, this is hypersonic, very interesting. So my question to you, how you are, the usefulness of the intellectual property system, the interior industrial design, various design, interior design, there is some matters who are precious matters in your business aircraft. Thank you.
Can you repeat the exact question?
The usefulness of the intellectual property systems, trademarks, industrial design.
Well,
I mean,
limitation articles,
for us,
precious articles.
Is part of the operational business to protect everything that we do with the right level of intellectual property and trademarks. So when it's about technology, it depends on the way we develop the technology, if it's fully internally done, because it's about system. A car is a very complex, let's say, putting together many systems. There are actually more than 20,000 parts in a vehicle like ours. So, and even more when you decouple that. So according to the system, if it's us developing, we are protecting it, of course, in terms of IP. If it's a co-development with some of our technology partners, then it's a shared IP, like the good example that I was saying about before, the e-powertrain. So it's actually a shared IP. And then there are, of course, trademarks that are covering the design and are covering the name and the logo and all of that. So it's part of the, let's say, process. And of course, it's something that you do to protect the right also for any possible use of the future in terms even of merchandising and licensing. if this was your question.
Thank you. Maybe Pininfarina interior design for hypersonic jets could be the next thing we'll see coming out. We can talk about that.
Exactly.
Right?
Maybe.
And from our side, we try to do a lot of the design in-house so that we keep the intellectual property in-house as well. I think we submitted about 10 patents so far. And one of the interesting ones that I can mention is we use the liquid hydrogen not just for propulsion, but we also use it to cool the aircraft. As I mentioned, we get up to very high temperatures of about 1,000 degrees Celsius when we fly at hypersonic velocities. So we use the liquid hydrogen around the aircraft in the critical parts of the aircraft that gets very heated. And then that turns into gaseous hydrogen, which is used as thrust. So it's a pretty interesting system, one of the first things that we patented, actually.
Great. I think that's all we have time for. Unfortunately, we've got one more question.
Yes.
Yes.
Hello, thank you both for your presentation. I have a question for Paolo, for Pininfarina. I was wondering what are your key markets and how do you interact with your customers aside from inviting them in Italy for the test experience on a daily basis?
Our key market right now is definitely North America. So we are active in North America, Europe, Middle East, and we are starting now to activate in Japan. But our, let's say, main market is still North America. It's where actually you have, two factors which are combining. One is it's basically where you have the richest community of supercar collectors, and from the other side there is also a higher level of readiness for electric mobility. So this is basically what have pushed us to basically work mostly around that market. When it's not us basically inviting and addressing our clients, we do that through dealers. It's basically multi-brands dealers which are located in the most strategical area and cities around US, Europe, Middle East. Also because the dealers have the knowledge of the people, so they know what they want, they know how to operate, they know how to find them and how to assist them, so in the best possible way, even after, so during also the after sales process.
Okay, thank you. I think that's all we have time for. I'd like to thank you very much for joining me here. I think it's been an extraordinary session, and the first one we've had a wow, so thank you for that, Martina, as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.